Hi, this is Dr. Austin Head, and welcome back to Into the Cortex. The theme for this episode and several following episodes is how people can improve their science thinking. First, I'm going to introduce you to the three cognitive conditions or presettings in the brain which impact the quality of science thinking. By becoming aware of these conditions, individuals can develop what I call science mindfulness. Science mindfulness is just basically a heightened sense of self-awareness of the cognitive processes and sensations that are connected to science thinking. Now let me introduce you to the conditions. The first condition is science thinking is fundamentally different from everyday, commonplace thinking. The second is science explanations are often incompatible with the human common senses. And the third condition is science explanations are frequently counterintuitive. In this episode, we're going to more closely examine the first condition. I can demonstrate it using the phenomenon of free-falling objects, which was discussed earlier in episode 5. All you have to do is watch what happens when I drop this banana. Ready? Go. Adult humans just know that unless something or someone interferes with a dropped object, it will fall straight down to the ground. This is because during infancy, we humans develop an intuitive theory of gravity based on countless observations and experiences of the world around us. In the case of a falling banana or any other falling object, the intuitive theory of gravity works. But now let's look at this phenomenon from a different perspective. Try to explain why the banana falls to the ground. This simple and satisfying System 1 explanation is that objects fall to Earth under the influence of gravity. Problem solved. But if you stop and think about it, this response does not really help explain why an apple falls to the ground. Instead, it simply names the phenomenon. So, to help us understand this better, I'm going to tell you a little story. You're likely familiar with the story of Newton relaxing under an apple tree, then suddenly getting hit in the head by a falling apple. As the story goes, Newton gained insight from the apple hitting him in the head, and that insight was gravity. Most likely the story is not true, but in any case, it's a good example of scientific thinking. An apple falling from a tree is such a common event that most people do not give it a second thought. This is what makes Isaac Newton such a good science thinker. He did have a second thought, which was, why does that apple fall down to the ground? What Newton was attempting to do was to uncover a pattern or trend to the free fall of objects. His ultimate goal was to glean insights into how the invisible force, gravity, works. Let me give you one more example of the difference between science thinking and everyday thinking. This one is an interactive exercise. In a few moments, an image will pop up on the screen for approximately 10 seconds. All you have to do is watch. Are you ready? Go. So what did you see? Most people quickly recognize the scene as a forest or simply a bunch of trees. That is the rapid and satisfying answer. However, a much greater level of detail can be extracted from the image. An ecologist could parse out the scene by identifying all the different types of trees and bushes and a whole host of other living and non-living factors. So was your take on the scene succinct and holistic, or was it a fine-grained, detailed scientific analysis? This exercise reveals another tangible aspect of science thinking. The more detailed scientific analysis requires extra focus, effort, and energy. This is because science thinking uses the System 2 processor, which requires additional fuel to support it. When someone's engaged in concerted science thinking, additional glucose, the fuel source for the brain, is removed from the bloodstream and absorbed by the brain. The more intensive effort and energy usage and mental exertion needed for science thinking can lead individuals to the erroneous conclusion that they're not good at science. This misconception is supported by the pervasive social meme that if someone is good at something, they don't have to work very hard at it. Within the context of this view, struggling with a particular concept or problem is an indicator of an inherent lack of ability or intelligence. Now I'm going to discuss what can be done to help individuals increase their science mindfulness. First, individuals need to be cognizant of the conditions that are affiliated with science thinking and take appropriate actions. They should be able to correctly diagnose the extra effort and physical exertion as normal and natural components of science thinking. Then, when they experience such sensations, they will not attribute it to an inherent inability to do science. Second, when science thinking becomes tiresome, individuals need to take mental breaks, such as stretching and walking around, and allow their system to rest and recharge. Educators know that this approach works for practically all learning situations. This is a major reason that elementary schools are bringing back recess. After working on abstract academic content, children can take a physical break and allow their system 2 processors to recharge. The results are more focused learning and increased academic performances. Finally, individuals can develop what psychologist Carol Dweck describes as a growth mindset. A growth mindset is one in which intelligence and knowledge are seen as fungible and changeable. Research reveals that students with growth mindsets persevere longer and achieve higher academic marks relative to those students who do not have a growth mindset. It's really not hard to imagine that a growth mindset can be very useful in the context of learning science. As was discussed in earlier episodes, science explanations are abstract and counterintuitive. Therefore, it's inevitable that when people will experience some degree of struggle and angst when working on science content. There are a diverse array of instructional strategies and material developed by Dr. Dweck and other researchers that can be used to help individuals develop their own growth mindsets. This information can be found in a variety of printed materials and online sources. Now let's summarize the big ideas in this episode. First, science thinking is qualitatively different from everyday thinking. Second, the different sensations equated with science thinking, additional effort, and mental exertion may lead individuals to erroneously conclude they do not do well at science. Third, when individuals become more aware of the process and the sensations connected to science thinking, they're better prepared to face the challenging science content. The next episode will focus on another condition for science thinking, the fact that our senses are often inadequate for directly observing the causes of phenomena. Until next time, keep on sciencing.